Chapter 9. Where a coffin should have been, there was a ladder, leading down into darkness. We peered into the open tomb. "There's no way I'm climbing down there," Horace said. But then a trio of bombs shook the building, raining chips of concrete on our heads, and suddenly Horace was pushing past me, grasping for the ladder. "Excuse me, out of my way, best dressed go first." Emma caught him by the sleeve. "I have the light, so I'll go first. Then Jacob will follow in case there are things down there." I flashed a weak smile, my knees going wobbly at the thought. Enoch said, "You mean things other than rats and cholera and whatever sorts of mad trolls live beneath crypts?" "It doesn't matter what's down there," Millard said grimly. "We'll have to face it, and that's that." "Fine," said Enoch. "But Miss Wren had better be down there too, because rat bites don't heal quickly." "Hollow gas bites even less so," said Emma. And then she swung her foot onto the ladder. "Be careful," I said. "I'll be right above you." She saluted me with her flaming hand. "Once more into the breach," she said, and began to climb down. Then it was my turn. "Do you ever find yourself climbing into an open grave during a bombing raid," I said, "and just wish you'd stayed in bed?" Enoch kicked my shoe. "Quit stalling." I grabbed the lip of the tomb and put my foot on the ladder. Thought briefly of all the pleasant, boring things I might have been doing with my summer, had my life gone differently. Tennis camp, sailing lessons, stocking shelves, and then, through some Herculean effort of will, I made myself climb. The ladder descended into a tunnel. The tunnel dead-ended to one side, and in the other direction disappeared into blackness. The air was cold and suffused with a strange odor, like clothes left to rot in a flooded basement. The rough stone walls beaded and dripped with moisture of mysterious origin. As Emma and I waited for everyone to climb down, the cold crept into me, degree by degree. The others felt it too. When Bronwyn reached the bottom, she opened her trunk and handed out the peculiar sheep's wool sweaters we'd been given in the menagerie. I slipped one over my head. It fit me like a sack, the sleeves falling past my fingers and the bottom sagging halfway to my knees, but at least it was warm. Bronwyn's trunk was empty now, and she left it behind. Miss Peregrine rode inside her coat, where she'd practically made a nest for herself. Millard insisted on carrying the tails in his arms, heavy and bulky as it was, because he might need to refer to it at any moment, he said. I think it had become his security blanket, though, and he thought of it as a book of spells which only he knew how to read. We were an odd bunch. I shuffled forward to feel for hollows in the dark. This time, I got a new kind of twinge in my gut, ever so faint, as if a hollow had been here and gone, and I was sensing its residue. I didn't mention it, though. There was no reason to alarm anyone unnecessarily. We walked. The sound of our feet slapping the wet bricks echoed endlessly up and down the passage. There'd be no sneaking up on whatever was waiting for us. Every so often, from up ahead, we'd hear a flap of wings or a pigeon's warble, and we'd pick up our pace a little. I got the uneasy feeling we were being led toward some nasty surprise. Embedded in the walls were stone slabs, like the one we'd seen in the crypt, but older, the writing mostly worn away. Then we passed a coffin, graveless on the floor, then a whole sack of them, leaned against a wall like discarded moving boxes. "What is this place?" Hugh whispered. "Graveyard overflow," said Enoch. "When they need to make room for new customers, they dig up the old ones and stick them down here." "What a terrible loop entrance," I said. "Imagine walking through here every time you needed in or out." "It's not so different from our cairn tunnel," Millard said. "Unpleasant loop entrances serve a purpose. Normals tend to avoid them, so we peculiars have them all to ourselves." So rational, so wise. All I could think was, there are dead people everywhere and they're all rotted and bony and dead and oh God. Uh-oh, Emma said, and she stopped suddenly, causing me to run into her and everyone else to pile up behind me. She held her flame to one side, revealing a curved door in the wall. It hung open slightly, but only darkness showed through the crack. We listened. For a long moment there was no sound but our breath and the distant drip of water. Then we heard a noise, but not the kind we were expecting. Not a wing flap or the scratch of a bird's feet, but something human. Very softly, someone was crying. "Hello?" called Emma. "Who's in there?" "Please don't hurt me," came an echoing voice. Or was it a pair of voices? Emma brightened her flame. Bronwyn crept forward and nudged the door with her foot. It swung open to expose a small chamber filled with bones. Femurs, shin bones, skulls, the dismembered fossils of many hundreds of people, heaped up in no apparent order. I stumbled backward, dizzy with shock. "Hello?" Emma said. "Who said that? Show yourself." At first, I couldn't see anything in there but bones. But then I heard a sniffle and followed the sound to the top of the pile, where two pairs of eyes blinked at us from the murky shadows at the rear of the chamber. "There's no one here," said a small voice. "Go away," came a second voice. "We're dead." "No, you're not," said Enoch, "and I would know." "Come out of there," Emma said gently. "We're not going to hurt you." Both voices said at once, "Promise?" "We promise," said Emma. The bones began to shift. A skull dislodged from the pile and clattered to the floor, where it rolled to a stop at my feet and stared up at me. "Hello, future," I thought. Then, two boys crawled into the light, on hands and knees atop the bone pile. Their skin was deathly pale, and they peeped at us with black circled eyes that wheeled dizzyingly in their sockets. "I'm Emma, this is Jacob, and these are our friends," Emma said. "We're peculiar, and we're not going to hurt you." The boys crouched like frightened animals, saying nothing, eyes spinning, seeming to look everywhere and nowhere. "What's wrong with them?" Olive whispered. Bronwyn hushed her. "Don't be rude." "Can you tell me your names?" Emma said, her voice coaxing and gentle. "I'm Joel and Peter," the larger boy said. "Which are you?" Emma said. "Joel or Peter?" "I'm Peter and Joel," said the smaller boy. "We don't have time for games," said Enoch. "Are there any birds in there with you? Have you seen any fly past?" "The pigeons like to hide," said the larger. "In the attic," said the smaller. "What attic?" said Emma. "Where?" "In our house," they said together, and raising their arms, they pointed down the dark passage. They seemed to speak cooperatively, and if a sentence was more than a few words long, one would start and the other would finish, with no detectable pause between. I also noticed that whenever one was speaking and the other wasn't, the quiet one would mouth the other's words in perfect synchronicity, as if they shared one mind. "Could you please show us the way to your house?" asked Emma. "Take us to your attic?" Joel and Peter shook their heads and shrank back into the dark. "What's the matter?" Bronwyn said. "Why don't you want to go?" "Death and blood," cried one boy. "Blood and screaming," cried the other. "Screaming and blood and shadows that bite," they cried together. "Cheerio," said Horace, turning on his heels. "I'll see you all back in the crypt. Hope I don't get squashed by a bomb." Emma caught Horace by his sleeve. "Oh, no, you don't," You're the only one of us who's managed to catch any of those blasted pigeons." "Didn't you hear them?" Horace said. "That loop is full of shadows that bite, which could only mean one thing: hollows." "It was full of them," I said, "but that might have been days ago." "When was the last time you were inside your house?" Emma asked the boys. Their loop had been raided, they explained in their strange and broken way. But they'd managed to escape into the catacombs and hide among the bones. How long ago that was, they couldn't say. 2 days? 3? They'd lost all track of time down here in the dark. "Oh, you poor dears," said Bronwyn. "What terrors you must have endured." "You can't stay here forever," said Emma. "You'll age forward if you don't reach another loop soon. We can help you, but first we have to catch a pigeon." The boys gazed into one another's spinning eyes and seemed to speak without uttering a word. They said in unison, "Follow us." They slid down from their bone pile and started down the passage. We followed. I couldn't take my eyes off them. They were fascinatingly odd. They kept their arms linked at all times, and every few steps they made loud clicking sounds with their tongues. "What are they doing?" I whispered. "I believe that's how they see," said Millard. "It's the same way bats see in the dark. The sounds they make reflect off of things and then back to them, which forms a picture in their minds." "We are echolocators," Joel and Peter said. They were also apparently very sharp of hearing. The passage forked, then forked again. At one point, I felt a sudden pressure in my ears, and I had to wiggle them to release it. That's when I knew we'd left 1940 and entered a loop. Finally, we came to a dead-end wall with vertical steps cut into it. Joel and Peter stood at the base of the wall and pointed to a pinpoint of daylight overhead. "Our house," said the elder, "is up there," said the younger. And with that, they retreated into the shadows. The steps were slimed with moss and difficult to climb, and I had to go slowly or risk falling. They ascended the wall to meet a circular, person-sized door in the ceiling, through which shone a single gleam of light. I wedged my fingers into the crack and pushed sideways, and the door slid open like a camera shutter, revealing a tubular conduit of bricks that rose 20 or 30 feet to a circle of sky. I was at the false bottom of a fake well. I pulled myself into the well and climbed. Halfway up, I had to stop and rest, pushing my back against the opposite side of the shaft. When the burn in my biceps subsided, I climbed the rest of the way, scrambling over the lip of the well to land in some grass. I was in the courtyard of a shabby-looking house. The sky was an infected shade of yellow, but there was no smoke in it and no sound of engines. We were in some older time, before the war, before cars even. There was a chill in the air, and errant flakes of snow drifted down and melted on the ground. Emma came up the well next, then Horace. Emma had decided that only the 3 of us should explore the house. We didn't know what we would find up here, and if we needed to leave in a hurry, it was better to have a small group that could move fast. None who stayed below argued. Joel and Peter's warning of blood and shadows had scared them. Only Horace was unhappy and kept muttering to himself that he wished he'd never caught that pigeon in the square. Bronwyn waved to us from below and then pulled closed the circular door at the bottom of the well. The top side was painted to look like the surface of water. Dark, dirty water you'd never want to drop a drinking bucket into. Very clever. The 3 of us huddled together and looked around. The courtyard and the house were suffering from serious neglect. The grass around the well was tamped down, but everywhere else it grew up weedy thickets that reached higher than some of the ground floor windows. A doghouse sat rotting and half collapsed in one corner, and near it a toppled laundry line was gradually being swallowed by brush. We stood and waited, listening for pigeons. From beyond the house's walls, I could hear the tap of horses' hooves on pavement. No, this definitely wasn't London circa 1940. Then, in one of the upper floor windows, I saw a curtain shift. "Up there," I hissed, pointing at it. I didn't know if a bird or a person had done it, but it was worth checking out. I started toward a door that led into the house, beckoning the others after me, then tripped over something. It was a body lying on the ground, covered head to ankle with a black tarp. A pair of worn shoes poked from one end, pointing at the sky. Tucked into one cracked sole was a white card, on which had been written in neat script, "Mr. A. F. Crumbly, lately of the outer provinces, aged forward rather than be taken alive. Kindly requests his remains be deposited in the Thames." "Unlucky bastard," Horace whispered. "He came here from the country, probably after his own loop was raided, only to have the one he'd escaped to raided as well." "But why would they leave poor Mr. Crumbly out in the open this way?" whispered Emma. "Because they had to leave in a hurry," I said. Emma bent down and reached for the edge of Mr. Crumbly's tarp. I didn't want to look, but couldn't help myself, and I half turned away, but peeked back through split fingers. I had expected a withered corpse, but Mr. Crumbly looked perfectly intact and surprisingly young, perhaps only 40 or 50 years old, his black hair graying just around his temples. His eyes were closed and peaceful, as if he might have just been sleeping. Could he really have aged forward, like the leathery apple I took from Miss Peregrine's loop? "Hello, are you dead or asleep?" Emma said. She nudged the man's ear with her boot, and the side of his head caved and crumbled to dust. Emma gasped and let the tarp fall back. Crumbly had become a desiccated cast of himself, so fragile that a strong wind could blow him apart. We left poor, crumbling Mr. Crumbly behind and went to the door. I grasped the knob and turned it. The door opened, and we stepped through it into the laundry room. There were fresh-looking clothes in a hamper. A washboard hung neatly above a sink. This place had not been abandoned long. The feeling was stronger here, but was still only residue. We opened another door and came into a sitting room. My chest tightened. Here was clear evidence of a fight. Furniture scattered and overturned. Pictures knocked off the mantel. Stripes of wallpaper shredded to ribbons. Then Horace muttered, "Oh no," and I followed his gaze upward, to a dark stain discoloring a roughly circular patch of ceiling. Something awful had happened upstairs. Emma squeezed her eyes closed. "Just listen," she said. "Listen for the birds and don't think about anything else." We closed our eyes and listened. A minute passed. Then finally the fluttering coo of a pigeon. I opened my eyes to see where it had come from. The staircase. We mounted the stairs gently, trying not to creak them under our feet. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, in my temple. I could handle old, brittle corpses. I wasn't sure if I could take a murder scene. The second-floor hallway was littered with debris. A door, torn from its hinges, lay splintered. Through the broken doorway was a fallen tower of trunks and dressers. A failed blockade. In the next room, the white carpet was soaked with blood, the stain that had leaked through the floor to the ceiling below. But whomever it had leaked from was long gone. The last door in the hall showed no signs of forced entry. I pushed it open warily. My eyes scanned the room. There was a wardrobe, a dresser topped with carefully arranged figures, lace curtains fluttering in a window. The carpet was clean, everything undisturbed. Then my eyes went to the bed and what was in it, and I stumbled back against the door jamb. Nestled under clean white covers were two men, seemingly asleep, and between them, two skeletons. "Aged forward," said Horace, his hands trembling at his throat. Two of them considerably more than the others. The men who looked asleep were as dead as Mr. Crumbly downstairs. Horace said, and if we touched them, they would disintegrate in just the same way. "They gave up," Emma whispered. "They got tired of running, and they gave up." She looked at them with a mix of pity and disgust. She thought they were weak and cowardly, that they'd taken the easy way out. I couldn't help wondering, though, if these peculiars simply knew more than we did about what the whites did with their captives. Maybe we would choose death too, if we knew. We drifted into the hall. I felt dizzy and sick, and I wanted out of this house. But we couldn't leave yet. There was one last staircase to climb. At the top, we found a smoke-damaged landing. I imagined peculiars who'd withstood the initial attack on this house gathering here for a last stand. Maybe they'd tried to fight the corrupted with fire, or maybe the corrupted had tried to smoke them out. Either way, it looked like the house had come close to burning down. Ducking through a low doorway, we entered a narrow, slope-walled attic. Everything here was burned black. Flames had made gaping holes in the roof. Emma prodded Horace. "It's here somewhere," she said quietly. "Work your magic, bird catcher." Horace tiptoed into the middle of the room and sing-songed, "Here, pigeon, pigeon, pigeon." Then, from behind us, we heard a wing beat and a strangled chirp. We turned to see not a pigeon, but a girl in a black dress, half hidden in the shadows. "Is this what you're after?" the girl said, raising one arm into a shaft of sunlight. The pigeon squirmed in her hand, struggling to free itself. "Yes," Emma said. "Thank heaven you caught it." She moved toward the girl with her hands out to take the pigeon, but the girl shouted, "Stop right there," and snapped her fingers. A charred throw rug flew out from beneath Emma and took her feet with it, sending her crashing to the floor. I rushed to Emma. "Are you okay?" "On your knees," the girl barked at me. "Put your hands on your head." "I'm fine," Emma said. "Do as she says. She's telekinetic and clearly unstable." I knelt down by Emma and laced my fingers behind my head. Emma did the same. Horace, trembling and silent, sat heavily and placed his palms on the floor. "We don't mean you any harm," Emma said. "We're only after the pigeon." "Oh, I know perfectly well what you're after," the girl said with a sneer. "Your kind never gives up, do you?" "Our kind?" I said. "Lay down your weapons and slide them over," barked the girl. "We don't have any," Emma said calmly, trying her best not to upset the girl any further. "This will go easier for you if you don't assume I'm stupid," the girl shouted. "You're weak and have no powers of your own, so you rely on guns and things. Now lay them on the floor." Emma turned her head and whispered, "She thinks we're whites." I almost laughed out loud. "We aren't whites, we're peculiar." "You aren't the first blank eyes to come here pigeon hunting," she said, "nor the first to try impersonating peculiar children, and you wouldn't be the first I've killed, neither. Now put your weapons on the floor before I snap this pigeon's neck, and then yours." "But we aren't whites," I insisted. "Look at our pupils if you don't believe us." "Your eyes don't mean nothing," the girl said. "False lenses are the oldest trick in the book, and trust me, I know 'em all." The girl took a step toward us into the light. Hate smoldered in her eyes. She was tomboyish, except for the dress, with short hair and a muscular jaw. She had the glassy look of someone who hadn't slept in days, who was running now on instinct and adrenaline. Someone in that condition wouldn't be kind to us, nor patient. "We are peculiar, I swear," Emma said. "Watch, I'll show you." She lifted one hand from her head and was about to make a flame when a sudden intuition made me grab her wrist. "If there are hollows close by, they'll sense it," I said. "I think they can feel us kind of like when I feel them, but it's much easier for them when we use our powers. It's like setting off an alarm." "But you're using your power," she said, irritated, "and she's using hers." "Mine is passive," I said. "I can't turn it off, so it doesn't leave much of a trail. As for her, maybe they already know she's here. Maybe it's not her they want." "How convenient," the girl said to me. "And that's supposed to be your power, sensing shadow creatures?" "He can see them too," said Emma, "and kill them." "You need to invent better lies," the girl said. "No one with half a brain would buy that." Just as we were talking about it, a new feeling blossomed painfully inside me. I was no longer sensing the left-behind residue of a hollow, but the active presence of one. "There's one nearby," I said to Emma. "We need to get out of here." "Not without the bird," she muttered. The girl started across the room toward us. "Time to get on with it," she said. "I've given you more than enough chances to prove yourselves. Anyway, I'm beginning to enjoy killing you things. After what you did to my friends, I just can't seem to get enough of it." She stopped a few feet from us and raised her free hand, about to bring what was left of the roof down on our heads, maybe. If we were going to make a move, it had to be now. I sprang from my crouched position, threw my arms in front of me, and collided with the girl, knocking her to the floor. She cried out in angry surprise. I rammed my fist into the palm of her free hand so she couldn't snap her fingers again. She let the bird go, and Emma grabbed it. Then Emma and I were up, rushing toward the open door. Horace was still on the floor in a daze. "Get up and run," Emma shouted at him. I was pulling Horace up by his arms when the door slammed in my face and a burned dresser lifted out of the corner and flew across the room. The edge of it connected with my head, and I went sprawling, taking Emma down with me. The girl was in a rage, screaming. I was certain we had only seconds to live. Then Horace stood up and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Melina Mannon." The girl froze. "What did you say?" "Your name is Melina Mannon," he said. "You were born in Luxembourg in 1899. You came to live with Miss Thrush when you were 16 years old, and have been here ever since." Horace had caught her off guard. She frowned, then made an arcing motion with her hand. The dresser that had nearly knocked me unconscious sailed through the air and then stopped, hovering directly above Horace. If she let it drop, it would crush him. "You've done your homework," said the girl. "But any white could know my name and birthplace. Unfortunately for you, I'd no longer find your deceptions interesting." And yet, she didn't quite seem ready to kill him. "Your father was a bank clerk," Horace said, speaking quickly. "Your mother was very beautiful, but smelled strongly of onions. A lifelong condition she could do nothing to cure." The dresser wobbled above Horace. The girl stared at him, her brows knit together, hand in the air. When you were 7, you badly wanted an Arabian horse, Horace continued. Your parents couldn't afford such an extravagant animal, so they bought a donkey instead. You named him Habib, which means beloved. And loved him you did. The girl's mouth fell open. Horace went on. You were 13 when you realized you could manipulate objects using only your mind. You started with smaller things, paper clips and coins, then larger and larger ones. But you could never pick up Habib with your mind, because your ability did not extend to living creatures. When your family moved houses, you thought it had gone away entirely, because you couldn't move anything at all anymore. But it was simply that you hadn't gotten to know the new house yet. Once you became familiar with it, mapped it in your mind, you could move objects within its walls. How could you possibly know all this? Melina said, gaping at him. Because I dreamed about you, said Horace. That's what I can do. My God, said the girl, you are peculiar. And the dresser drifted gently to the floor. I wobbled to my feet, head throbbing where the dresser had hit me. You're bleeding, Emma said, jumping up to inspect my cut. I'm fine, I said, dodging her. The feeling was shifting inside me, and being touched while it was happening made it harder to interrupted its development somehow. Sorry about your head, Melina Mannon said. I thought I was the only peculiar left. There's a whole gang of us down your well in the catacomb tunnel, Emma said. Really? Melina's face lit up. Then there's still hope. There was, said Horace, but it just flew out the hole in your roof. What, you mean Winifred? Melina put 2 fingers in her mouth and whistled. A moment later, the pigeon appeared, flying down through the hole to land on her shoulder. Marvelous, said Horace, clapping his hands. How'd you do that? Winnie's my chum, Melina said. Tame as a house cat. I wiped some blood from my forehead with the back of my hand, then chose to ignore the pain. There wasn't time to be hurt, I said to the girl. You mentioned that whites have been here, chasing pigeons. Melina nodded. Them and their shadow beasts came 3 nights ago, surrounded the place, took Miss Thrush and half our wards here, then set fire to the house. I hid on the roof. Since then, whites have come back every day in little groups, hunting for Winifred and her friends. And you killed them? Emma asked. Melina looked down. That's what I said, ain't it? She was too proud to admit she lied. It didn't matter. Then we're not the only ones hunting for Miss Wren, Emma said. That means she's still free, I said. Maybe, said Emma. Maybe. We think the pigeon can help us, I said. We need to find Miss Wren, and we think the bird knows how. I never heard of any Miss Wren, said Melina. I just feed Winnie when she comes into our courtyard. We're friends, she and I, ain't we, Winnie? The bird chirped happily on her shoulder. Emma moved close to Melina and addressed the pigeon. Do you know Miss Wren? She said, enunciating loudly. Can you help us find her, Miss Wren? The pigeon leapt off Melina's shoulder and flapped across the room to the floor. Then it moved to the door. She warbled and fluttered her wings, then flew back. This way, it seemed to say. That was proof enough for me. We need to take the bird with us, I said. Not without me, said Melina. If Winnie knows how to find this Imbrian, then I'm coming too. Not a good idea, said Horace. We're on a dangerous mission, you see. Emma cut him off. Give us the bird, we'll come back for you, I promise. A sudden jolt of pain made me gasp and double over. Emma rushed to my side. Jacob, are you all right? Instead, I hobbled to the window, forced myself upright, and projected my feeling out toward the cathedral dome, visible over the rooftops just a few blocks away. Then, down at the street, where horse-drawn wagons rattled past. Yes, there. I could feel them approaching from a side street, not far away. Them. Not one hollow, but two. We have to go, I said. Now. Please, Horace begged the girl. We must have the pigeon. Melina snapped her fingers, and the dresser that had nearly killed me raised up off the floor again. I can't allow that, she said, narrowing her eyes and flicking them toward the dresser, just to make sure we understood one another. But take me along, and you get Winnie in the bargain. Otherwise... The dresser pirouetted on one wooden leg, then tipped and crashed onto its side. Fine, then, Emma said through her teeth. But if you slow us down, we take the bird and leave you behind. Melina grinned, and with a flick of her hand, the door banged open. Whatever you say. We flew down the stairs so fast that our feet hardly seemed to touch the ground. In 20 seconds, we were back in the courtyard, leaping over dead Mr. Crumbly, diving down the dry well. I went first, kicking in the mirrored door at the bottom rather than wasting time sliding it open. It broke from its hinges and fell into pieces. Look out below, I called, then lost my grip on the wet stone steps and fell flailing and tumbling into the dark. A pair of strong arms caught me, Bronwyn's, and set my feet on the floor. I thanked her, my heart pounding. What happened up there? Asked Bronwyn. Did you catch the pigeon? We got it, I said, as Emma and Horace reached the bottom, and a cheer went up among our friends. That's Melina, I said, pointing up at her. And that was all the time for introductions we had. Melina was still at the top of the steps, fooling with something. Come on, I shouted. What are you doing? Buying us time, she shouted back, and then she pulled shut and locked a wooden lid that capped the well, closing out the last rays of light. As she climbed down in darkness, I explained about the hollows that were chasing us. In my panicked state, this came out as, "Go now, run, hollows now!" which was effective, if not terribly articulate, and threw everyone into hysterics. How can we run if we can't see? Enoch shouted. Light a flame, Emma. She'd been holding off because of my warning back in the attic. Now seemed like a good time to reinforce that, so I grabbed her arm and said, Don't. They'll be able to pinpoint us too easily. Our best hope, I thought, was to lose them in this dark, forking maze of tunnels. But we can't just run blindly in the dark, said Emma. Of course, said the younger echolocator. We can, said the older. Melina stumbled toward their voices. Boys, you're alive! It's me, it's Melina. Joel-Ann Peters said, We thought you were dead, every last one of you. Everyone link hands, Melina said. Let the boys lead the way. So I took Melina's hand in the dark, and Emma took mine. Then she felt for Bronwyn's, and so on, until we'd formed a human chain with the blind brothers in the lead. Then Emma gave the word, and the boys took off at an easy run, plunging us into the black. We forked left, splashed through puddles of standing water. Then from the tunnel behind us came an echoing crash that could only have meant one thing. The hollows had smashed through the well door. They're in, I shouted. I could almost feel them narrowing their bodies, wriggling down into the shaft. Once they made it to level ground and could run, they'd overtake us in no time. We'd only passed one split in the tunnels, not enough to lose them, not nearly enough. Which is why what Millard said next struck me as patently insane. Stop. Everyone stop. The blind boys listened to him. We piled up behind them, tripping and skidding to a halt. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I shouted. "Run!" "So sorry," Millard said, "but this just occurred to me. One of us will have to pass through the loop exit before the echolocators or the girl do, or they will cross into the present and we into 1940 and will be separated. For them to travel to 1940 with us, one of us has to go first and open the way." "You didn't come from the present?" Melina said, confused. "From 1940, like he said," Emma replied. "It's raining bombs out there, though. You might want to stay behind." "Nice try," said Melina. "You ain't getting rid of me that easy. It's got to be worse in the present. Whites everywhere. That's why I never left Miss Thrush's loop." Emma stepped forward and pulled me with her. "Fine. We'll go first." I stuck out my free arm, feeling blindly in the dark. "But I can't see a thing." The elder echolocator said, "It's just 20 paces ahead there. You can't miss it," said the younger. So we plodded ahead, waving our hands in front of us. I kicked something with my foot and stumbled, my left shoulder scraping the wall. "Keep it straight," Emma said, pulling me to the right. My stomach lurched. I could feel it. The hollows had made it down the well shaft. Now, even if they couldn't sense us, there was a 50-50 chance they'd choose the right spur of the tunnel and find us anyway. The time for sneaking around was over. We had to run. "Screw it," I said. "Emma, give me a light." Gladly. She let my hand go and made a flame so large I felt the hair on the right side of my head singe. I saw the transition point right away. It was just ahead of us, marked by a vertical line painted on the tunnel wall. We took off running for it in a mob. The moment we passed it, I felt a pressure in my ears. We were back in 1940. We bolted through the catacombs, Emma's fire casting manic shadows across the walls, the blind boys clicking loudly with their tongues and shouting out, "Left," or "Right," when we came to splits in the tunnel. We passed the stack of coffins, the landslide of bones. Finally, we returned to the dead end and ladder to the crypt. I shoved Horace up ahead of me, then Enoch, and then Olive took off her shoes and floated up. "We're taking too long," I shouted. Down the passage, I could feel them coming, could hear their tongues pounding the stone floor, propelling them forward, could picture their jaws beginning to drip black goo in anticipation of a kill. Then I saw them, a blur of dark motion in the distance. I screamed, "Go!" and leapt onto the ladder, the last one to climb it. When I was near the top, Bronwyn reached down her arm and yanked me up the last few rungs, and then I was in the crypt with everyone else. Groaning loudly, Bronwyn picked up the stone slab that topped Christopher Wren's tomb and dropped it back in place. Not 2 seconds later, something slammed violently against the underside of it, making the heavy slab leap. It wouldn't hold the hollows for long, not 2 of them. They were so close. Alarms blared inside me, my stomach aching like I'd drunk acid. We dashed up the spiral staircase and into the nave. The cathedral was dark now, the only illumination a weird orange glow, eking through the stained glass windows. I thought for a moment it was the last strains of sunset, but then, as we dashed toward the exit, I caught a glimpse of the sky through the broken roof. Night had fallen. The bombs were falling still, thudding like an irregular heartbeat. We ran outside. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10. From where we stood, arrested in awe on the cathedral steps, it looked as if the whole city had caught fire. The sky was a panorama of orange flame, bright enough to read by. The square where we'd chased pigeons was a smoking hole in the cobblestones. The sirens droned on, a soprano counterpoint to the bomb's restless bass. Their pitch so eerily human it sounded like every soul in London had taken to their rooftops to cry out collective despair. Then awe gave way to fear, and the urgency of self-preservation. We rushed down the debris-strewn steps into the street, past the ruined square, around a double-decker bus that looked like it had been crushed in the fist of an angry giant, running I knew not where, nor cared, so long as it was away from that feeling that grew stronger and sicker inside me with each passing moment. I looked back at the telekinetic girl, pulling the blind brothers along by their hands while they clicked with their tongues. I thought of telling her to let the pigeon go so we could follow it, but what use would it be to find Miss Wren now while hollows were chasing us? We'd reach her only to be slaughtered at her doorstep, and we'd put her life in danger too. No, we had to lose the hollows first, or better yet, kill them. A man in a metal hat stuck his head out of a doorway and shouted, "You are advised to take cover," then ducked back inside. Sure, I thought, but where? Maybe we could hide in the debris and the chaos around us, and with so much noise and distraction everywhere, the hollows would pass us by. But we were still too close to them, our trail too fresh. I warned my friends not to use their abilities no matter what, and Emma and I led them zigzagging through the streets, hoping this would make us harder to track. Still, I could feel them coming. They were out in the open now, out of the cathedral, lurching after us, invisible to all but me. I wondered if even I would be able to see them here, in the dark, shadow creatures in a shadow city. We ran until my lungs burned, until Olive couldn't keep up anymore, and Bronwyn had to scoop her into her arms. Down long blocks of blacked-out windows staring like lidless eyes, past a bombed library, snowing ash and burning papers, through a bombed cemetery, long-forgotten Londoners unearthed and flung into trees, grinning in rotted formal wear. A curly-cued swing set in a cratered playground, the horrors piled up, incomprehensible, the bombers now and then dropping flares to light it all with a pure, shining white of 1,000 camera flashes, as if to say, look what we made. Nightmares come to life, all of it, like the hollows themselves. Don't look, don't look, don't look. I envied the blind brothers, navigating a mercifully detail-free topography, the world in wireframe. I wondered briefly what their dreams looked like, or if they dreamt at all. Emma jogged alongside me, her wavy, powder-coated hair flowing behind her. "Everyone's knackered," she said. "We can't keep going like this." She was right. Even the fittest of us were flagging now. And soon the hollows would catch up to us, and we'd have to face them in the middle of the street. And that would be a bloodbath. We had to find cover. I steered us toward a row of houses, because bomber pilots were more likely to target a cheerfully lit house than another smudge in the dark. Every house was blacked out, every porch light dark, every window opaque. An empty house would be safest for us, but blacked out like this, there was no way to tell which houses were occupied and which weren't. We'd have to pick one at random. I stopped us in the road. "What are you doing?" Emma said, puffing to catch her breath. "Are you mad?" "Maybe," I said, and then I grabbed Horace, swept my hand toward the row of houses and said, "Choose." "What?" he said. "Why me?" "Because I trust your random guesses more than my own." "But I never dreamed about this," he protested. "Maybe you did and don't remember," I said. "Choose." Realizing there was no way out of it, he swallowed hard, closed his eyes for a second, then turned and pointed to a house behind us. "That one." "Why that one?" I asked. "Because you made me choose," Horace said angrily. "That would have to do." The front door was locked. No problem. Bronwyn wrenched off the knob and tossed it into the street, and the door creaked open on its own. We filed into a dark hallway lined with family photos, the faces impossible to make out. Bronwyn closed the door and blocked it with a table she found in the hall. "Who's there?" came a voice from further inside the house. Damn, we weren't alone. "You were supposed to pick an empty house," I said to Horace. "I'm going to hit you very hard," Horace muttered. There was no time to switch houses. We'd have to introduce ourselves to whoever was here and hope they were friendly. "Who is there?" the voice demanded. "We aren't thieves or Germans or anything like that," Emma said. "Just here to take cover." No response. "Stay here," Emma told the others, and then she pulled me after her down the hall. "We're coming to say hello," she called out, loudly and friendly. "Don't shoot us, please." We walked to the end of the hall and rounded a corner, and there, standing in a doorway, was a girl. She held a wicked down lantern in one hand and a letter opener in the other, and her hard black eyes flicked nervously between Emma and me. "There's nothing of value here," she said. "This house has been looted already." "I told you, we're not thieves," Emma said, offended. "And I told you to leave. If you don't, I'll scream, and my father will come running and with his guns and things." The girl looked at once childish and prematurely adult. She had her hair in a short bob and wore a little girl's dress with big white buttons trailing down the front. But something in her stony expression made her seem older, world-weary at 12 or 13. "Please don't scream," I said, thinking not about her probably fictitious father, but about what other things might come running. Then a small voice piped up behind her, through the doorway she'd been conspicuously blocking. "Who's there, Sam?" The girl's face pinched in frustration. "Only some children," she said. "I asked you to keep quiet, Esme." "Are they nice? I want to meet them." "They were just leaving." "There are lots of us and 2 of you," Emma said matter-of-factly. "We're staying here for a bit, and that's that. You're not going to scream either, and we're not going to steal anything." The girl's eyes flashed with anger, then dulled. She knew she'd lost. "All right," she said. "But try anything and I'll scream and bury this in your belly." She brandished the letter opener weakly, then lowered it to her waist. "Fair enough," I said. "Sam," said the little voice, "what's happening now?" The girl, Sam, stepped reluctantly aside, revealing a bathroom that danced with flickering lights of candles. There was a sink and a toilet and a bathtub, and in the bathtub a little girl of perhaps 5. She peeped curiously at us over the rim. "This is my sister Esme," Sam said. "Hello," said Esme, waggling a rubber duck at us. "Bombs can't get you when you're in the bath. Did you know that?" "I didn't," Emma replied. "It's her safe place," Sam whispered. "We spend every raid in here." "Wouldn't you be safer in a shelter?" I said. "Those are awful places," Sam said. The others had tired of waiting and began coming down the hall. Bronwyn leaned through the doorway and waved hello. "Come in," Esme said, delighted. "You're too trusting," Sam scolded her. "One day, you're going to meet a bad person, and then you'll be sorry." "They aren't bad," said Esme. "You can't tell just by looking." Then Hugh and Horace pressed their faces through the doorway, curious to see whom we'd met, and Olive scooted between their legs and sat in the middle of the floor. And pretty soon all of us were squeezed into the bathroom together, even Melina and the blind brothers, who stood creepily facing the corner. Seeing so many people, Sam's legs shook, and she sat down heavily on the toilet, overwhelmed. But her sister was thrilled, asking everyone's names as they came in. "Where are your parents?" Bronwyn asked. Father's shooting bad people in the war, Esme said proudly. She mimed holding a rifle and shooting. Bang! Emma looked at Sam. You said your father was upstairs, she said flatly. You broke into our house, Sam replied. True. And your mother? Said Bronwyn. Where is she? A long time dead, Sam said, with no apparent feeling. So when Father went to war, they tried shipping us off to family elsewhere. And because Father's sister in Devon is terribly mean and would only take one of us, they tried shipping Esme and me off to different places. But we jumped off the train and came back. We won't be split up, Esme declared. We're sisters. And you're afraid if you go to a shelter, they'll find you, Emma said. Send you away. Sam nodded. I won't let that happen. It's safe in the tub, said Esme. Maybe you should get in too. That way we'd all be safe. Bronwyn touched her hand to her heart. Thank you, love, but we'd never fit. While the others talked, I turned my focus inward, trying to sense the hollows. They weren't running anymore. The feeling had stabilized, which meant they weren't getting any closer or farther away, but were probably sniffing around nearby. I took this as a good sign. If they knew where we were, they'd be coming straight for us. Our trail had gone cold. All we had to do was keep our heads down for a while, and then we could follow the pigeon to Miss Wren. We huddled on the bathroom floor, listening to bombs fall in other parts of the city. Emma found some rubbing alcohol in the medicine cabinet and insisted on cleaning and bandaging the cut on my head. Then Sam began to hum some tune I knew but couldn't quite name, and Esme played with her duck in the tub, and ever so slowly, the feeling began to diminish. For a scant few minutes, that twinkling bathroom became a world unto itself, a cocoon far away from trouble and war. But the war outside refused to be ignored for long. Anti-aircraft guns rattled. Shrapnel skittered like claws across the roof. The bombs drew closer until their reports were followed by lower, more ominous sounds. The dull thud of walls collapsing. Olive hugged herself. Horace put his fingers in his ears. The blind boys moaned and rocked on their feet. Miss Peregrine wriggled deep into the folds of Bronwyn's coat, and the pigeon trembled in Melina's lap. What sort of madness have you led us into? Melina said. I warned you, Emma replied. The water in Esme's tub rippled with each blast. The little girl clutched her rubber duck and began to cry. Her sobs filled the little room. Sam hummed louder, pausing to whisper. You're safe, Esme. You're safe in here, between melody lines. But Esme only cried harder. Horace took his fingers out of his ears and tried to distract Esme by making shadow animals on the wall. A crocodile snapping its jaws, a bird flying, but she hardly noticed. Then, the last person I'd expect to care about making a little girl feel better scooted over to the tub. Look here, Enoch said. I have a little man who'd like to ride on your duck. And he'd just about fit, too. From his pocket, he took a clay homunculus figure, 3 inches tall, the last of those he'd made on Cairnholm. Esme's sobs abated as she watched him bend the clay man's legs and sit him on the edge of the tub. Then, with a press of Enoch's thumb against the clay man's tiny chest, he came to life. Esme's face glowed with delight as the clay man sprang to his feet and strolled along the lip of the tub. Go on, said Enoch. Show her what you can do. The clay man jumped up and clicked his heels, then took an exaggerated bow. Esme laughed and clapped her hands, and when a bomb fell close by a moment later, causing the clay man to lose his balance and fall into the tub, she only laughed harder. A sudden chill rolled up the back of my neck and prickled my scalp, and then the feeling came over me so swiftly and sharply that I groaned and doubled over where I sat. The others saw me and knew instantly what it meant. They were coming. They were coming very quickly. Of course they were. Enoch had used his power, and I hadn't even thought to stop him. We might as well have sent up a signal flare. I staggered to my feet, the pain attacking me in debilitating waves. I tried to shout, "Go, run out the back," but I couldn't force out the words. Emma put her hands on my shoulders. "Collect yourself, love, we need you." Then something was beating at the front door, each impact echoing through the house. "They're here," I finally managed to say, but the sound of the door shaking on its hinges had said it for me. Everyone scrambled to their feet and squeezed into the hall in a panicked knot. Only Sam and Esme stayed put, baffled and cowering. Emma and I had to pry Bronwyn away from the tub. "We can't just leave them," she cried as we dragged her toward the door. "Yes, we can," said Emma. "They'll be all right. They aren't the ones the Hollows are after." I knew that was true, but I also knew the Hollows would tear apart anything in their path, including a couple of normal girls. Bronwyn struck the wall in anger, leaving a fist-shaped hole. "I'm sorry," she said to the girls, then let Emma push her into the hall. I hobbled after them, my stomach writhing. "Lock this door and don't open it for anyone," I shouted, then looked back to catch a last glimpse of Sam's face, framed in the closing door, her eyes big and scared. I heard a window smash in the front hall. Some suicidal curiosity made me peek around the corner. Squirming through the blackout curtains was a mass of tentacles. Then Emma took my arm and yanked me away, down another hall, into a kitchen, out the back door, into an ash-dusted garden, down an alley where the others were running in a loose group. Then someone said, "Look, look," and still running, I swiveled to see a great white bird fluttering high above the street. Enoch said, "Mine! It's a mine!" And what had seemed like gossamer wings resolved suddenly and cleared into a parachute, the fat silver body hanging below it, packed with explosives. An angel of death floating serenely toward Earth. The Hollows burst outside. I could see them distantly, loping through the garden, tongues waving in the air. The mine landed by the house with a gentle clink. "Get down!" I screamed. We never had a chance to run for cover. I'd only just hit the ground when there was a blinding flash and a sound like the earth ripping open, and a shock wave of searing hot wind that knocked the air from my lungs. Then a black hail of debris whipped hard against my back, and I hugged my knees to my chest, making myself as compact as I could. After that, there was only wind and sirens and a ringing in my ears. I gasped for air and choked on the swirling dust. Pulling the collar of my sweater up over my nose and mouth to filter it, I slowly caught my breath. I counted my limbs. 2 arms, 2 legs. Good. I sat up slowly and looked around. I couldn't see much through the dust, but I heard my friends calling out for one another. There was Horace's voice, and Bronwyn's, Hugh's, Millard's. Where was Emma? I shouted her name, tried to get up and fell back again. My legs were intact but shaking. They wouldn't take my weight. I shouted again, "Emma! I'm here!" My head snapped toward her voice. She materialized through the smoke. "Jacob, oh God, thank God." Both of us were shaking. I put my arms around her, running my hands over her body to make sure she was all there. "Are you all right?" I said. "Yes, are you?" My ears hurt, and my lungs ached, and my back stung where I'd been pelted by debris. But the pain in my stomach was gone. The moment the blast went off, it was as if someone had flipped a switch inside me, And just like that, the feeling had vanished. The hollows had been vaporized. "I'm okay," I said. "I'm okay." Aside from scrapes and cuts, so were the rest of us. We staggered together in a cluster and compared injuries. All were minor. "It's some kind of miracle," Emma said, shaking her head in disbelief. It seemed even more so when we realized that everywhere around us were nails and bits of concrete and knife-like splinters of wood, many of them driven inches into the ground by the blast. Enoch wobbled to a car parked nearby, its windows smashed, its frame so pocked with shrapnel that it looked like it had been sprayed with a machine gun. "We should be dead," he marveled, poking his fingers into one of the holes. "Why aren't we full of holes?" Hugh said, "Your shirt, mate," then went to Enoch and plucked a crumpled nail from the back of his grit-encrusted sweater. "And yours," said Enoch, pulling a jagged spike of metal from Hugh's. Then we all checked our sweaters. Embedded in each were long shards of glass and pieces of metal that should have passed right through our bodies, but hadn't. Our itchy, ill-fitting, peculiar sweaters weren't fireproof or waterproof, as the emu Raph had guessed. They were bulletproof, and they had saved our lives. "I never dreamed I'd owe my life to such an appalling article of clothing," said Horace, testing the sweater's wool between his fingers. "I wonder if I could make a tuxedo jacket out of it instead." Then Melina appeared, Pigeon on her shoulder, Blind Brothers at her side. With their sonar-like senses, the brothers had discovered a low wall of reinforced concrete. It had sounded hard, and pulled Melina behind it just as the bomb exploded. That only left the two normal girls unaccounted for. But as the dust settled and their house came into view, or what was left of it, any hope of finding them alive seemed to fade. The upper floor had collapsed, pancaking down onto the lower. What remained was a skeletal wreck of exposed beams and smoking rubble. Bronwyn took off running toward it anyway, shouting the sisters' names. Numbly, I watched her go. "We could have helped them, and we didn't," Emma said miserably. "We left them to die." "It wouldn't have made the least bit of difference," Millard said. "Their deaths had been written into history. Even if we'd saved their lives today, something else would have taken them tomorrow. Another bomb, a bus crash. They were of the past, and the past always mends itself, no matter how we interfere. Which is why you can't go back and kill baby Hitler to stop the war from happening," said Enoch. "History heals itself. Isn't that interesting?" "No," Emma snapped. "And you're a heartless bastard for talking about killing babies at a time like this. Or ever." "Baby Hitler," said Enoch. "And talking loop theory is better than going into pointless hysterics." He was looking at Bronwyn, who was climbing the rubble, digging in the wreckage, flinging debris this way and that. She turned and waved her arms at us. "Over here," she cried. Enoch shook his head. "Someone please retrieve her. We've got an Imbrian to find." "Over here," Bronwyn shouted, louder this time. "I can hear one of them." Emma looked at me. Wait, what did she say? And then we were all running to meet her. We found the little girl beneath a slab of broken ceiling. It had fallen across the bathtub, which was wrecked, but had not entirely collapsed. Cowering inside was Esme, wet, filthy, and traumatized, but alive. The tub had protected her, just like her sister promised it would. Bronwyn lifted the slab enough for Emma to reach in and pull Esme out. She clung to Emma, trembling and weeping. "Where's my sister?" she said. "Where's Sam?" "Hush, baby, hush," Emma said, rocking her back and forth. "We're going to get you to a hospital. Sam will be along later." That was a lie, of course, and I could see Emma's heart breaking as she told it. That we had survived and the little girl had also were 2 miracles in one night. To expect a third seemed greedy. But then a third miracle did happen, or something like one. Her sister answered. "I'm here, Esme," came a voice from above. "Sam!" the little girl shouted, and we all looked up. Sam was dangling from a wooden beam in the rafters. The beam was broken and hung down at a 45-degree angle. Sam was near the low end, but still too high for any of us to reach. "Let go," Emma said. "We'll catch you." "I can't." Then I looked more closely and saw why she couldn't, and I nearly fainted. Sam's arms and legs were dangling free. She wasn't hanging onto the beam, but from it. She'd been impaled through the center of her body, and yet her eyes were open, and she was blinking alertly in our direction. "I appear to be stuck," she said calmly. I was sure Sam would die at any moment. She was in shock, so she felt no pain, but pretty soon the adrenaline pumping through her system would dissipate, and she'd fade and be gone. "Someone get my sister down," Esme cried. Bronwyn went after her. She climbed a crumbling staircase to the ruined ceiling, then reached out to grab onto the beam. She pulled and pulled, and with her great strength was able to angle the beam downward until the broken end was nearly touching the rubble below. This allowed Enoch and Hugh to reach Sam's dangling legs and very gently slide her forward until she came free with a soft ploop and landed on her feet. Sam regarded the hole in her chest dully. It was nearly 6 inches in diameter and perfectly round, like the beam she'd been impaled on. And yet, it didn't seem to concern her much. Esme broke away from Emma and ran to her sister. "Sam!" she cried, throwing her arms around the injured girl's waist. "Thank heaven you're all right." I don't think she is," Olive said. "I don't think she is at all." But Sam worried only for Esme, not for herself. Once she hugged the stuffing out of her, Sam knelt down and held the little girl at arm's length, scanning for cuts and bruises. "Tell me where it hurts," she said. "My ears are ringy. I scraped my knees, and I got some dirt in my eye." Then Esme began to tremble and cry, the shock of what had happened overcoming her again. Sam hugged her close, saying, "There, there." It made no sense that Sam's body was functioning in any capacity. Stranger still, her wound wasn't even bleeding, and there was no gore or little bits of entrails hanging out of it, like I knew to expect from horror movies. Instead, Sam looked like a paper doll that had been attacked with a giant hole punch. Though everyone was dying for an explanation, we had elected to give the girls a moment to themselves and stared in amazement from a respectful distance. Enoch, however, paid them no such courtesy. "Excuse me," he said, crowding into their personal space, "but could you please explain how it is that you're still alive?" "It's nothing serious," Sam said, "although my dress may not survive." "Nothing serious," said Enoch. "I can see clear through you." "It does smart a little," she admitted, "but it'll fill in a day or so. Things like this always do." Enoch laughed dementedly. "Things like this." "In the name of all that's peculiar," Millard said quietly, "you know what this means, don't you?" "She's one of us," I said. We had questions. Lots of questions. As Esme's tears began to fade, we worked up the courage to ask them. Did Sam realize she was peculiar? She knew she was different, she said, but had never heard the term peculiar. Had she ever lived in a loop? She had not. A what? Which meant she was just as old as she appeared to be. 12, she said. Had no Imbrine ever come to find her? Someone came once, she answered. There were others like me, but to join them, I would have had to leave Esme behind. Esme can't do anything? I asked. I can count backward from 100 in a duck voice, Esme volunteered through her sniffles, and then began to demonstrate, quacking. 100, 99, 98. Before she could get any further, Esme was interrupted by a siren, this one high-pitched and moving fast in our direction. An ambulance careened into the alley and raced towards us. Its headlights blacked out so that only pinpricks of light shone. It skidded to a stop nearby, cut its siren, and a driver leapt out. Is anyone hurt? The driver said, rushing over to us. He wore a rumpled gray uniform and a dented metal hat, and though he was full of energy, his face looked haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes met the hole in Sam's chest, and he stopped dead in his tracks. Cor blimey! Sam got to her feet. It's nothing, really, she said. I'm fine. And to demonstrate how fine she was, she passed her fist in and out of the hole a few times and did a jumping jack. The medic fainted. Said Hugh, nudging the fallen man with his foot. You'd think these chaps would be made of tougher stuff. Since he's clearly unfit for service, I say we borrow his ambulance, Enoch said. There's no knowing where in the city that pigeon's leading us. If it's far, it could take us all night to reach Miss Wren on foot. Horace, who'd been sitting on a chunk of wall, sprang to his feet. That's a fine idea, he said. It's a reprehensible idea, Bronwyn said. You can't steal an ambulance. Injured persons need it. We're injured persons, Horace whined. We need it. It's hardly the same thing. St. Bronwyn, Enoch said sarcastically, are you so concerned with the well-being of normals that you'd risk Miss Peregrine's life to protect a few of theirs? 1,000 of them aren't worth one of her, or one of us for that matter. Bronwyn gasped. What a thing to say in front of... Sam stalked toward Enoch with a humorless look on her face. Look here, boy, she said. If you imply that my sister's life is worthless again, I will clobber you. Calm down. I wasn't referring to your sister. I only meant that I know exactly what you meant, and I'll clobber you if you say it again. I'm sorry if I offended your delicate sensibilities, Enoch said, his voice rising in exasperation. But you've never had an Imbrine, and you've never lived in a loop, and so you couldn't possibly understand that this, right now, is not real, strictly speaking. It's the past. The life of every normal in this city has already been lived. Their fates are predetermined, no matter how many ambulances we steal. So it doesn't bloody matter, you see. Looking a bit baffled, Sam said nothing, but continued to give Enoch the evil eye. Even so, said Bronwyn, it's not right to make people suffer unnecessarily. We can't take the ambulance. That's all well and good, but think of Miss Peregrine, said Millard. She can't have more than a day left. Our group seemed evenly divided between stealing the ambulance or going on foot, so we put it to a vote. I myself was against taking it, but mostly because the roads were so pocked with bomb holes that I didn't know how we'd drive the thing. Emma took the vote. Who's for taking the ambulance? She said. A few hands shot up. And against? Suddenly, there was a loud pop from the direction of the ambulance, and we all turned to see Miss Peregrine standing by as one of its rear tires hissed air. Miss Peregrine had voted with her beak, by stabbing it into the ambulance's tire. Now no one could use it. Not us, not injured persons, and there was no point in arguing or delaying any further. Well, that simplifies things, said Millard. We go on foot. Miss Peregrine, Bronwyn cried. How could you? Ignoring Bronwyn's indignation, Miss Peregrine hopped over to Melina, looked up at the pigeon on her shoulder, and screeched. The message was clear. Let's go already. What could we do? Time was wasting. Come with us, Emma said to Sam. If there's any justice in the world, we'll be somewhere safe before the night is through. I told you I won't leave my sister behind, Sam replied. You're going to one of those places she can't enter, aren't you? I don't know, Emma stammered. It's possible. I don't care either way, Sam said coldly. After what I just saw, I wouldn't so much as cross the road with you. Emma drew back, going a bit pale. In a small voice, she asked, Why? If even outcasts and downtrodden folk like yourselves can't muster a bit of compassion for others, she said, then there's no hope for this world. And she turned away and carried Esme toward the ambulance. Emma reacted as if she'd been slapped, her cheeks going red. She ran after Sam. We don't all think the way Enoch does. And as for our Imbrine, I'm sure she didn't mean to do what she did. Sam spun to face her. That was no accident. I'm glad my sister's not like all of you. Wish to God I wasn't. She turned away again, and this time Emma didn't follow. With wounded eyes, she watched Sam go, then slouched after the others. Somehow, the olive branch she'd extended had turned into a snake and bitten her. Bronwyn peeled off her sweater and set it down on the rubble. Next time bombs start falling, have your sister wear this, she called to Sam. It'll keep her safer than any bathtub. Sam said nothing, didn't even look. She was bending over the ambulance driver, who was sitting up now and mumbling, I had the queerest dream. That was a stupid thing to do, Enoch said to Bronwyn. Now you don't have a sweater. Shut your fat gob, Bronwyn replied. If you'd ever done a nice thing for another person, you might understand. I did do something nice for another person, Enoch said, and it nearly got us eaten by hollows. We mumbled goodbyes that went unreturned and slipped quietly into the shadows. Melina took the pigeon from her shoulder and tossed it skyward. It flew a short distance before a string she tied around its foot snapped taut, and it hovered, caught in the air, like a dog straining at its lead. Miss Wren's this way, Melina said, nodding in the direction the bird was pulling, and we followed the girl and her pigeon friend down the alley. I was about to assume hollow watch, my now customary position near the head of the group, when something made me glance back at the sisters. I turned in time to see Sam lift Esme into the ambulance, then bend forward to plant a kiss on each of her scraped knees. I wondered what would happen to them. Later, Millard would tell me that the fact that none of them had ever heard of Sam, and someone with such a unique peculiarity would have been well known, meant she probably had not survived the war. The whole episode had really gotten to Emma. I don't know why it was so important for her to prove to a stranger that we were good-hearted when we knew ourselves to be, but the suggestion that we were anything less than angels walking the earth, that our natures were more complexly shaded, seemed to bother her. They don't understand, she kept saying. Then again, I thought, maybe they do. End of chapter 10.